So today is a day so much different than any other before it. Although I have been training rigorously for several weeks now, my heart still feels faint and unsure. My position with the National Intelligence Service has always consisted of analytical duties. If I were following my routine assignments, I would not be so concerned. In the office, I have no rival, I have mastered my skill set. It is as if I was destined to succeed here. I have the ability to look at any document or computer screen and instantly memorize it. And I can cross-reference the data in my head against any other information I have ever had access to. This is my comfort zone. But, today, those skills will be put to use in a field operation. Which is why I am here, staring at this remote office building controlled by Japanese Yakuza. It is here that these underworld operators are planning on passing sensitive information about our foreign and domestic operatives and local undercover agents to the State Security Department of North Korea. My objective is clear. While working under the cover of being an acquisition agent for some local gangs, I will try to convince either party to sell me a copy of this list. To try to discern if the information is correct, and to determine the depth of the information they may have gathered. The reason I was selected, of course, is, if I just get a glimpse of the material, I may be able to make sense of it. There are so many reasons in my mind why this assignment would be better off in the hands of a field agent. Someone with more mission training and someone with better social skills. Someone who wasn't raised in an orphanage by nuns who may feel more comfortable around strangers. Someone like my friend, Kim Lee. He does this kind of thing all the time, and it never seems to faze him. He always seems even cooler under pressure than under normal circumstances. How can he joke with cold-blooded killers, and carry on a casual conversation with the darkest of men, and yet seem so out of place around his own wife and son? My only solace this day, is I know Kim Lee is my backup. And he will have an extraction team standing by if things go wrong. He would never let me down. We have always worked well together and I trust his instinct. One last check of the surveillance team down the street, with a quick glance to help me overcome the fear of taking my next step as I approached the shadow of the doorway. Once inside, I was taken aback by the almost cliché surroundings. Men of questionable backgrounds gathering around an old desk staring me down as I entered the room. There, in the back of the room, appeared to be two young men in hooded sweatshirts and cargo-style pants. Displaying a certain military swagger, and three other men, one, a very large man dressed in a finely tailored suit, and two others wearing more casual clothing. The two later had tattooed images showing around their collar and sleeves. I could not imagine a more uncomfortable place for me to be. As the two groups exchanged glances, the large Japanese man in the tailored suit started to clear his throat as he prepared to speak to me. So much was running through my head as I could start to feel my heart race, and I began to wonder how I would respond. I could feel my mouth drying out as I contemplated my answer. How could I possibly convince anyone I belonged here, at this very moment? And then I remembered, if they actually do have a list of operatives, their very lives would be in danger. Men like my friend, Kim Lee. I had to succeed, no matter what the cost. As he started to speak, his eyes locked onto mine and his two associates stood up straight from their slouched postures and took a position, one by each side. "Who sent you?" he asked me in a very intimidating tone. I waited for a moment to respond, as I tried desperately to sound confident in my reply. "Sir, I represent a group of businessmen that would find the information you possess extremely useful, in the development and planning of future investments, in our local communities. If possible, we would like to avoid certain government agencies, that may want to interfere with our planned growth. I am sure you understand our position." Although his stare seemed less intense, by no means did he appear to be relaxed. Again he glanced at the other two men across the room, then back at me. He once again cleared his throat before speaking. "That doesn't really answer my question," I asked. "Who sent you?" Again, I waited a moment to gain my composure before responding. "Well, sir, I believe you know exactly why I am here, and what type of person would have sent me. Someone like you, someone that has gathered power and influence and wants more of it. Someone willing to take some risks to get what he wants. I have come here today, to enter into a negotiation with you, so that we too, may gain access to the information you possess. The businessmen I represent are willing to pay great dividends, to get their hands on this information. All I need from either party, is a figure you are comfortable with, and a quick peek at the goods, to verify we are buying the genuine article. I could feel the intensity of the room start to relax, as both parties began to confer between one another. The Yakuza boss, looking over his shoulder at me several times as they spoke. I wasn't feeling a great deal of trust, but I hoped their greed would bend them to my offer. The two North Korean soldiers now started to look nervous as their conversation continued. I wish I could hear what they were saying, but they were careful to guard their words. The Yakuza boss turned towards me as his entourage stood back. As he approached me, he reached into his coat pocket and removed a large folded envelope. He looked down at it as he opened the top and slid a handful of documents out of the top, only exposing the very top half of the first page. But it was enough for me to determine they were authentic. He looked down at me and smiled. Again he began to clear his throat. Before I conclude my deal here with these gentlemen behind me, I would like to hear your offer. At that very moment, the men behind him began to draw their guns, taking aim at the backs of the men, positioned between us, rapidly pulling the trigger, dropping the large man at my feet, and his two associates fell close behind. I became frozen in fear as the blood pooled up before me. One of the soldiers held me at gunpoint, as the other removed the folder from the hands of the Yakuza boss. As he was crouched down by the body, he looked up at me and said, "You never should have come here today." I knew in the back of my mind that the gunfire would bring back up, if I could only distract him, for just a moment. I tried to respond, but he ordered me to turn around in an authoritative voice. I quickly complied, but felt the still warm barrel of his gun press into the back of my neck. Without a moment's hesitation, he pulled the trigger. And I could feel the pressure as the bullet penetrated the back of my skull. Quickly, I began to lose sensation throughout my body as I collapsed in the doorway. As I felt my consciousness slipping away, I heard the footsteps of the extraction team rushing in and the muffled voice of my friend, Kim Lee. I could not reach out to my friend as he leaned forward to assess my injuries. As the team fanned out and gave pursuit to the North Korean spies, my friend Kim Lee grabbed me by my shoulders and pulled me into his lap as he called for medics. His voice cracking, as he cried out. I could hear his voice, but I could not respond. I could see him take my hand, but I could not feel his grip as he squeezed. He was looking into my eyes, tearfully begging me to stay with him. Oh, how quickly the turn of events came. I couldn't even tell him what I had seen, my mission, my reason for being there. Was it all in vain? As the medics entered the room, I could see by their expression that the expectations would not be good. Isn't it funny how just a short few minutes ago, I walked into a situation surrounded by an unknown outcome? So many things could go wrong, so many fears, and what ifs. And yet here I am, feeling my very life seeping from my body, and I no longer fear death. I only fear failing my mission. I know deep in my heart what I saw was important, and yet for the very first time in my life, I couldn't remember what I saw. How strange. As the medics prepared the gurney, I began to wonder, would this be my last moments? Would Kim Lee be able to retrieve the data I was so close to? I am very proud of my time at the National Intelligence Service, and yet I feel regret for not having more friends. Being raised in an orphanage, I had no real family of my own. Why did I never pursue a family? Why? Who will be at my death memorial? Who will keep me in their prayers? And why until this very moment, did I not ever ask myself this? The pace of the medics seemed hurried and desperate now, as they rushed me to the waiting ambulance. Kim Lee, still running alongside trying to keep hold of my hand. I wanted to so badly warn him about what I saw. But what was it? A moment ago it seemed so important, why can't I remember it now? I can now see the darkened silhouette of my friend Kim Lee as the doors to the ambulance close. Goodbye, my friend, I wish I could have told you how much your friendship has meant to me. The sound of the siren is fading and I feel I am losing my fight for consciousness. Is this the end?